Hey, what's up, guys? So, history lesson. Let's rewind back to 1979. Before I was born, two guys back in California decided to start their own bike company, GT Bicycles. At first, they focused on the BMX scene and they actually grew pretty rapidly and were successful in the 80s with their BMX bicycles. I remember as a kid in elementary school that, yeah, Redline, GT, like those were some pretty cool brands. I could never afford them. My parents wouldn't buy them for me. I was riding them a Huffy, but they were cool bikes that I wanted to have. So GT bicycles continued to grow pretty rapidly. The late 80s, they started their mountain bike line, which started to get some traction as mountain biking was becoming more popular in the early 90s. Kind of the time when I started to get into mountain biking as well. But the BMX scene started to slow down. They needed some capital, so they actually sold the company to Bain Capital, which took a controlling stake in the company in the early 90s. Bain Capital then took the company public in 1995. So tragically, in 1996, Richard Long, one of the founders of GT, died tragically in a motorcycle accident, which was devastating, obviously, for those around him and his family, but especially to the brand as well, as he was one of the original founders, had a great direction for the company. So in 1998, the year of the bike that we're going to talk about, Bain actually sold off GT to another investment group, Quastar, for $175 million. But less than 5 years later, that company had filed for bankruptcy. And then Quastar was acquired by Pacific Cycles, who later then was acquired by Durrell Industries in 2004, and then again GT and Durrell was acquired by Pond Holdings in 2021, who currently owns GT to this day. So unfortunately, like a lot of other mountain bike companies and a few this last year as well, a rocky road, and unfortunately a lot of times the brands end up getting split apart and the names get bought, and yeah, they end up getting turned into something that they were originally not. So back in 2003, I was out in college in Utah and I needed to get a new bike. I had a hardtail that was my original mountain bike and I wanted full suspension. So I had originally seen a couple years before this crazy GT full suspension with crazy design, thermoplastic carbon fiber, which looked really interesting to me, and I really wanted one of those bikes. Unfortunately, at the time, I couldn't find one in my price range, which was pretty low at the time. I was just starting college. But I ended up finding an aluminum version, the LTS 1000 DS, that I'm going to show you in a second, that piqued my interest. I want to say I paid around $450 for it, $500 maybe. Found it on eBay. I don't even remember where it came from, but it showed up pretty dirty, but I cleaned it all up and it was actually luckily in very good condition. So I lucked out there. And I used that bike for 5 years in college in the base of the Wasatch Mountain Range. I took that bike everywhere around Utah, and it was really fun. Yeah, it's interesting because actually, when I first met my wife, our first time we hung out, we went on a bike ride, and the GT was the bike that I used. And I remember her making fun of me because she had this cheap Walmart bike, and then I pull out my GT, and she was like, "Whoa, look at you!" I'm like, "Well, I like to mountain bike, so this is my equipment." But I remember her giving me a hard time about how cool my bike was compared to hers. So I rode the bike for 5 years. Then it was time to graduate, time to move to Houston. And I decided it was too big of a bike for Houston. I needed more of a cross-country bike. I was also strapped for cash at the end of college. I ended up needing to sell my bike, the GT, to my buddy who had just moved there, wanted to get into mountain biking. Anyway, so I sold the GT to my friend. Honestly, forgot about the bike for many years. And then a few years back, I happened to be on a phone call with my friend from Utah. And we hadn't talked in a while. And he said, "Hey, I still have your old mountain bike." I'm like, "What, the GT?" And he's like, "Yeah, I still have it." And I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "Don't sell it. I want that bike." Because he said he didn't really even ride it anymore. So I wanted the bike, but hadn't thought about it. And then we had this vintage bike come into the shop here for service. And I thought, oh, and I remembered the GT. And my brother-in-law happened to be in Utah exactly during this time, back in September. And so I said, "Hey, can you go pick up the GT from my friend in Utah?" So he did, and it's back here at the shop. So I haven't done anything with this bike since I got it in September. It's just been sitting in the warehouse here. I've just been busy with other things. But today we're going to go over it and maybe compare it to my current bike and then come up with a plan to kind of restore it. So let's go look at it. All right, let's go find the GT. Oh, here it is. Ta-da. All tucked away back here. So let's bring it out so that we can take a look at this beauty from the 90s. Oh, poor girl, she's seen better days. All right, so here is the 1998 GT LTS 1000 DS. So yeah, this bike, I remember the first time I got it and I was like, wow, this bike is sweet. Obviously I got it in 2003, so it was not a new bike, 5 years old at the time. So some of the designs have definitely changed and moved on even back then, but it's what I could afford, and so I decided to do it. And I always liked the design, and so I was like, hey, I want a full suspension. So it had a lot of things that I wanted when I saw it, and so here it is. So let's go over it. I don't know all the specs, so I'm going to kind of guess on some of these things, but well, I guess we'll start with the frame here. So yeah, this GT frame had been around for a few years. From what I could tell, I think it's 4 inches of travel in the back with the RockShox Super Deluxe. Yeah, they still use that name. So RockShox Super Deluxe coil in the back there with the crazy linkage. So one thing that you don't see very often today, and unfortunately Gorilla Gravity is no more, 100% American made. Custom 6061 aluminum from Santa Ana, California. So yeah, American made back in 1998. No internal cable routing, obviously. The old school mounts there. I was just thinking, I hope my derailleur hanger's okay, but yeah, it looks okay. Maybe a little bit bent, but not too bad. So yeah, hopefully the frame is okay. I haven't actually gone through the frame, make sure it's not cracked anywhere, but we're going to go through it, clean it up, polish it up, and see if we can make this sucker look nice again. All right, so let's talk about some of the things on this bike. Up front, we had the RockShox Judy. So this is a Judy XL, if any of you guys remember those. I remember seeing this fork in different mountain bike action magazines before I bought it. But I think there's 4 to 5 inches of travel up front, I believe. I don't know the condition of this fork, so I'm a little bit nervous. It is a coil fork. I think it's coil and elastomers, if I remember right, but a lot has changed over the years since this thing came out. So yeah, most full suspensions will have a shock over here, but as you can see, yeah, it's over here. So Super Deluxe coil, 4 inches is what I mentioned earlier. Looks like I have an adjustment here, so we'll see if the adjustment still works as far as compression and rebound adjustment. We'll see. I don't know how many pounds this spring is. I remember it was good for me back in college, but obviously I'm probably heavier now than I was in college. Not a ton. I try to keep myself in good shape, but we'll see if it's adequate. And for the drivetrain, so we got a Dior XT crankset. I don't know how many teeth are on it. We'll go through it and figure it out. We do have a front derailleur. Yeah, it looks like I got a Dior XT front derailleur. So I never like front derailleurs. It's kind of funny how it mounts on that little stub right there. But I guess they work, and hopefully this one will work still. Back in the day, I mean, triple clamp was where it was at. You got to have tons of gears, and you dump your gears fast, which had some advantages, but hey, let's be honest, I'm glad we've gone to one bys. And then here in the back, I have a very faded Shimano XTR derailleur. And if I remember right, this was an 8-speed. Let's see. Yep, so this is an 8-speed cassette. Looks like it's no bigger than like, I don't know, 30 tooth. So not very big. I do remember hardly ever adjusting this thing. So I had never had XTR prior to this bike. Probably haven't had it since, but I remember at the time really liking it, and it was very reliable. Front derailleur, not as much, but the rear derailleur I remember being pretty dang reliable, which was cool. Of course, there's only 8 cogs to worry about, unlike today's 12 speeds, and like most older bikes, you had this super long stem. I do not know how long it is, but yeah, it seemed to fit me okay. If I remember, this bike was a little bit big for me, even back then, but the bars actually aren't as narrow as some bikes you would think in the 90s. I guess because this was kind of like a downhill bike, so they put wider bars than was probably standard at the time. Yep, I don't know if this shifter still works. We'll have to see, this 8-speed shifter. And I got my 3-speed shifter over here. Oh no, is this integrated? I think this is integrated. No. Yeah, it looks like I got integrated shifter and brake Dior XT, which I'm not thrilled about, but maybe we can rebuild it and get it to work. I will have to investigate. So yeah, let's talk about the brakes. So back here we have some XT. Yep, it's faded, but you can see Dior XT V-brakes. So I remember this bugged me a lot because V-brakes were fine at the time, but I would get this thing very wet and muddy and I would lose traction, which is one of the downfalls of V-brakes because it's hitting contact with the rim. I remember riding on trails at the end of winter and super muddy, coming down and not having as much bite and braking as I'd like. So brake pads are MIA, so I don't know where those went. So the brakes will need some work. Now the front brake is pretty interesting. All right, so here's the front brake. Yep, it's a disc brake. This was my first disc brake, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the first disc brakes ever. It was mechanical. It was by RockShox, so they said RockShox disc brake. So yeah, this thing is very interesting. It looks to be 160 millimeters maybe. I don't think it's 180, but it's not huge. I remember it working okay. I have no idea on the condition of the pads. My pads probably need to be replaced, but we'll have to look into it and see where we're at. Cane Creek top cap here, some Cane Creek bearings here. We'll have to see the condition of the bearings after all these years. So I am concerned about that. I don't know the condition of the bearings in here as well. Bushings or bearings. Appears to have like a flip chip. I never messed with it, but kind of crazy back then to have flip chip option. SDG saddle, which, man, that's way back. No dropper, obviously. Yeah, not the best saddle, but we'll see if we keep it or do something else. All right, so these are obviously 26-inch wheels, which was the standard for so many years. So it looks like I have an XT hub on some Mavic wheels that hopefully are okay. I'm hoping the wheels will be salvaged. I remember buying these tires, these Panaracers. I wonder if I can find some. These are obviously dry rotted and gross, but what do you think? Go with blue tires on the front and the back. He put this on. I don't remember this tire. Old bike computer. All right, well, that's kind of a quick overview of the GT LTS 1998. Bikes have changed quite a bit. Just for fun, let me grab my current bike just so you can see some of the differences in old school bike versus today's bike. Wow. This Wolfridge is actually a few model years old, but man, what a difference. Just look at the difference in wheels, suspension design, and this obviously has a funky suspension design as well, which is kind of, maybe I just like funky suspension designs, I don't know. But yeah, what a difference between technology now versus back in 1998. So yeah, the evolution of bike design over 26 years, which is crazy. You have dropper post, wireless shifting, really nice suspension design now. A lot better disc brakes these days. So yeah, but hey, we have to start somewhere, and the industry had to move forward, and so this was one of the bikes that kind of pushed the industry forward, in my opinion. Obviously, a lot of other bikes came after this one from GT and from other brands, but at the time, I feel like it was a pretty sweet bike. So let me know what you guys think about my GT, what I should do with it. Part of me wanted to kind of modernize it a little bit, but at the same time, the other side, which is probably what I'm going to lean towards, is just to keep it old school and just make it work functionally. I may need to change some things, but hopefully the parts still work after all these years. We'll have to see once I get it on the stand and start getting into it, cleaning it up. But yeah, let me know, what would you do to the bike? So that video on restoring it is going to be coming very soon. In addition, we're going to take it out to the trail and hopefully ride it maybe with some other old school bikes in the area. I'm going to put it out there, see if we can get some old 90s bikes together and do a ride, just to kind of compare how the technology and the bikes have come in the last, few decades. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, hit the like button. Subscribe to Biking Roots if you'd like to see more content like this. And as always, take care. We'll see you on the next video. Bye.